Two fantastic race shoes and two completely different running experiences. The Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 are both shoes with very long names, and that's not all they've got in common, but still, they are extremely different shoes when you test them back to back, which is what I've spent the last week doing. Let's chat. Hi there, thanks for joining me. I'm Chris, a journalist who loves cutting through the marketing hype. And today we are looking at the Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4. The Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo is my son Benny's favorite racing shoe. It's the shoe he chooses every time he attempts to break a PB, which happens quite often at the moment. It's also been my weapon of choice for my last two full marathons. It's also been the shoe I've worn on more half marathons than any other shoe. However, more recently, particularly with the Model 3, the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite has really caught my eye and has actually become my favorite racing shoe right now. So let's start with the fast facts. The Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo weighs in today on my dodgy kitchen scales at 162 grams in my US 9.5. It has a 5mm drop from 39.5mm at the back to 34.5mm at the front. The Metaspeed Sky has an extremely light, unbelievably breathable, and virtually translucent upper with a really good amount of padding around the heel cup. It's actually a very, very comfortable shoe to wear, and a non-gusseted tongue, which has no padding at all, but which somehow remains in place and very, very comfortable throughout every run. That is probably something to do with these very light, flat, sawtooth laces, which hold everything in place really, really well and are a fantastic length for those who love to do the runner's knot. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 has a steeper drop from 40mm at the back to 32mm at the front for an 8mm drop, and on my kitchen scales today weighed in at 168 grams, making both of these shoes incredibly light races. The upper on the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is not quite as thin and breathable as the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, but is still extremely light, nice and stiff, still incredibly comfortable, and still a very cool running experience. It breathes very, very well. The heel cup, like on the Metaspeed Sky, is lightly padded and very, very comfortable. It's not quite as structured as the Metaspeed Sky's heel cup, not quite as solid, but still incredibly comfortable and very, very well designed. The ungusseted tongue on this shoe does have a small amount of padding, and that keeps it very, very comfortable throughout the run. And the tongue also happily stays in place thanks to the lace loops. Both of these shoes contain a carbon plate between two layers of foam. And on both of these shoes, the carbon plate is relatively straight. Both have an outsole that is easily sticky enough for any racing conditions. If anything, the Puma's is more sticky than the Asics, although the difference in the dry at least is negligible. And in the wet, yes, the Puma just wins out. Both shoes have a generous amount of room in the toe box. I have relatively wide feet, and I have no problems at all being perfectly comfortable in either of these shoes. So how is it that these shoes, which share so many similarities, can be so different in their running experience? Well, for me, it begins with stability. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is an incredibly stable race shoe. In fact, I'd say it is probably the most stable race shoe on the market right now. It is the sort of shoe, unlike any other race shoe, which quite honestly, you could wear to the shops. You could go to the supermarket, you could do your grocery shopping, you could bring that shopping home, you could walk it up the front stairs, pack it all away in the kitchen, and then go out for a run without ever once having to change your shoes. That is how stable the Deviate Nitro Elite 4s are. The Metaspeed Sky Tokyos, on the other hand, are about as unstable as a race shoe gets. That is because of this lovely big slab of Flight Foam Leap foam, which is below the carbon plate in this shoe. Above the carbon plate, there's a thinner layer of much firmer Flight Foam Blast Plus foam. The Flight Foam Leap foam is much squishier and bouncier, and when it's in a great big thick stack at the back, that means that there's a lot of squiggle under the heel of the shoe, and that makes it very, very unstable. Where the real magic happens is when there is a more even layer up the front of Leap foam and Blast Plus foam, and that creates that incredible bounce that the Metaspeed Skies have become famous for. I think out of all racing shoes, the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo brings the most evident sense of poppiness and of snappiness. It brings that exact sort of feeling we imagine when we think about a really great pair of carbon-plated shoes. It really does feel as if it is bouncing you down the road, but only when you are landing on your midfoot to forefoot. When you heel strike, it's a very different experience and not exactly a pleasant one. So that is really great at the beginning of a half marathon or of a full marathon. But at the end, when your form starts to suffer and when your foot starts landing a little bit lazily, then the shoe is not as rewarding and not as easy to run in. Where with the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4, because of its incredible stability, it will look after you throughout a long run, no matter how your feet are landing. And don't get me wrong, the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 has plenty of springiness. It's just a firmer type of springiness, where the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo relies on you to hit on your forefoot and bounce upwards. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 relies on its incredible carbon strength to actually spring your entire foot forward. It is spongy a little bit, and it is bouncy a little bit, but nothing like the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 4 uses your entire foot to spring you forward, rather than just creating bounce at the front end of your foot. It's a firmer kind of a spring that actually makes your feet feel lighter throughout a run. It makes your entire foot bounce off the ground more easily and more readily. And that is actually the only way I can explain it. It makes your feet feel lighter. And this became really evident when I did several test runs during the last week or two. What I did was I went out and did 5 to 10 kilometers in one pair of these shoes, came home, changed immediately into the other pair, and then went out and did the same run again. When I started in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyos, and I changed from a more bouncy but less stable shoe into a more stable shoe during the more tired part of my run, the second part of my run. This was a really, really comfortable transition. I went from a shoe that demands a certain type of foot landing to a shoe that works really well on any kind of foot landing. And actually, it made me think maybe it would be a good idea during a particular long event during my next marathon to change from one shoe to the other. One that's going to get me going fast at the beginning and one that's going to look after me near the end. Where I encountered a slight problem was when I did it the other way around, when I went out for the first 5 to 10 kilometers in the Deviate Nitro Elite 4s and then came home and changed into the Metaspeed Sky Tokyos. That's when the bad behavior of these shoes really started to stand out for me. When I was tired, when my form was not as good as it could have been, it sometimes felt as if the Metaspeed Sky Tokyos were working a little bit against me. I felt it in my ankles. I felt it in my Achilles. It was as if I was having to do a little bit more work to make sure that the shoe was always landing on that sweet spot. And this was a really strange sensation for me, not getting along so well with the Metaspeed Sky Tokyos. These are some of my favorite shoes in the world. I have had a long and very, very healthy relationship with the Metaspeed Sky range. And I think the Tokyo is the very, very best that Asics has developed so far. But when you run in them back to back against an equally capable but much more stable shoe, that's when you begin to see the weaknesses. And by the way, Benny and I buy all of our own shoes so that we can bring honest, unbiased reviews. So if you're getting anything out of this or any other reviews and you'd like to see more, you can support our little channel by clicking like and subscribe below. It's free and it's easy, and it really does support our little channel. Thank you. So, the Metaspeed Sky is the bouncier and snappier shoe, but the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 seems to move your feet more quickly. It seems to help your feet turn over more quickly, and as I said, it makes your feet feel lighter. The Metaspeed Sky Tokyo says, this is how we're going to do the run, and you can like it or lump it. And if you do the run the way it wants you to do it, it will reward you in spades. The Deviate Nitro Elite 4, on the other hand, supports you no matter how you want to run. It will run very, very fast with you and support your foot in what feels a more natural way. It will support your natural way of running no matter where you are or how you're feeling during an event. The Metaspeed Sky Tokyo relies more on bounce from that spectacular foam under the front of the foot. The Deviate Nitro Elite 4 relies more on firm springiness, on the stiffness of that carbon plate to help launch you forward with every step. So who is each shoe for? If you're making a decision between the two, how do you know which one is best for you? Well, let's start off with the easy one. If you're a heel striker, the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is the shoe for you. Heel striking is no fun in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. Heel strikers also, by the way, might enjoy the Metaspeed Edge, which I know looks very, very similar to the Sky that I'm reviewing today. I have a review of both of these shoes, the Sky versus the Edge, where I explain the differences, and I'll link to that in the description below. Also, for anybody who is concerned about form in the final part of a race event, as I am every single time, there's nothing quite like the last 6 kilometers of a marathon or the last 2 or 3 kilometers of a half marathon. If you're concerned about how your form might suffer during those final extremely tiring moments of an event, then the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 is also probably a better shoe for you. The Deviate Nitro Elite 4 will look after your feet much better when you are not landing as well as you should be. And as an added bonus, it also does a really good job when you're landing well. So I guess a way to summarize that would be to say that if you're not quite as confident after your training block, if you're not quite sure that you are going to run well during that final part of the event, then the Deviate might be a better shoe for you. However, if your training block has gone really well, or if you're doing a race that is shorter where you are simply quite confident that you are going to hold your form throughout the race, then I would absolutely recommend the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. It's an exciting shoe. It's a rewarding shoe. It feels really, really fast when you're landing well. And if you are confident that for the entire event you are going to land on the midfoot to the forefoot, then the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo is the shoe for you. Both of these are very, very good shoes. I think these are the 2 best racing shoes available on the market today. I hope that helps, and I will be running a comparison of the Deviate Nitro Elite 4 and the Metaspeed Edge in the next few weeks. So if you don't want to miss that and lots of other reviews that we've got coming up on Run with Benny, please do click subscribe down below. Until then, run safe, run happy. We will see you then.